Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
I searched the world, it couldn't fill me. Minds empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. When you came along and put me back together. Not so new. You were within me, and I was outside of myself. Shine in my blindness, radiance making me see. My heart is restless, my heart is restless, my heart is restless until it rests in you. Lord, in your mercy, whisper your name in my soul. My heart is listening. Tell me what you are in me. You, my salvation. I'm learning to take hold of you. My heart is restless, my heart is restless, my heart is restless until it rests in you. You never leave us, you call in our weakness, teach us how to return. Kindle and seize us, our fire and our sweetness. Let us love, let us run. You never leave us, you call in our weakness, teach us how to return. Kindle and seize us, our fire and our sweetness. Let us love, let us run. All hearts are restless, all hearts are restless, all hearts are restless until they rest. All hearts are restless, all hearts are restless, all hearts are restless until they rest in you.
In the end, it is love that matters. All else will pass away. We need a thoughtful love, a wisdom that sees and knows more deeply, a faith that trusts in the power of God who lives beneath our wings. Ours is the age of something radically new. It is more than a reformation. It is an evolution in love. It is not simply we humans who are in evolution, but God seeks to evolve, to become more being in love, more conscious, more God at the heart of the universe. This is the truth that sets us free, the light that eludes our sight. We are the privileged bearers of transcendence. God cannot do for us what we must do for ourselves. Empty our lives of the inner clutter and noise so that we may welcome God within. Only when we allow God to be God for us can God save us. because divine love can do no other than make whole. God's love is unmanageable and unruly. It is creative, spontaneous, and novel. It slips in between our controlling urges and dwells in the unbearable wholeness of our being. What a cunning God this is, who hides in lepers and appears in a poor man carpenter turned preacher. Divine love is beyond what the human mind can imagine or invent. It is not logical or predictable. It has empowered life from the beginning and promises to stay forever because love is ever new, ever more whole, deepening the rich creativity of life's playfulness. We all have a part in this unfolding love. We are all wholes within wholes, persons within persons, religions within religions. We are one body, and we seek one mind and heart, more personal and unified in love. This urging toward oneness is an invitation to evolve the divine. We must unfold the past into the quantum moment and let us aim toward the future. For up ahead is the Christ, rising from the dead in the darkness of night, to become for us the God of the future.
There are many ways we collaborate with each other to be the church we're called to be and to serve how we serve. And our contributing financially is one of the most important of those ways. If you want to help fund and sustain what we get to do together, go to crosspoint.org/contribute to see the many simple ways that you can do so. You can even text crosspointenc to 77977 to receive a link to get started now. Thank you for your partnership in the work we do together.
Hello. I wanted to take a second and make sure our Kids Point families knew about something happening October 30th, which is today, for those of you watching on Sunday morning. This afternoon, actually. Kids Point families this afternoon are invited to join us for a costume carnival this afternoon from 4 p.m. to 5:30 in the lower parking lot at Crosspointe. Wear your costumes to the event. Don't hold back. You can think of this as a fun dress rehearsal for trick-or-treat night if you want to. There's going to be carnival games, lots of treats, popcorn, tons of fun. And it's going to be a great opportunity to connect with other Kids Point families as well. So, like I said, it starts at 4 p.m. and you can show up anytime between then and 5:30. And I hope you have a really great time. I also wanted to plug something that I've been doing for almost 9 years, Wake Up Man. It's a Wednesday morning meeting where men of any description can come and dive into topics together, get to know some others, be known by others, get that midweek tag in that so many of us love to get. Starting this Wednesday, November 2nd, we're going to begin reading this book, Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. I read this book years ago. It came out in I think 2008, something like that. It has continued to have a huge impact on my understanding of how we make decisions, how we justify those decisions after we've already made them, how we end up hurting people if we're not aware of the clever justification machines that we can be. And this is an updated edition. It just came out. It's got a new chapter called Dissonance, Democracy, and the Demagogue. So it should be even better than it used to be. If you want to join in, get a copy of this book in any format that you want and have chapter 1 read by Wednesday morning. And if there are financial hurdles between you and buying extra books right now, just let me know. We've got extra books on hand for exactly that purpose. Also, by the way, we meet virtually at Wake Up Man. The link for Wake Up Man is in the description, or you can find it on crosspoint.org. Finally, if you didn't get a chance to tune in last Sunday, please make time and do that. We celebrated our 25th birthday at Crosspointe last weekend, and rather than throwing ourselves a party, we threw our support behind some really great partners in our community, funding their work, trying to make it abundantly clear that we want to bear light in this community and in the world at their side. And so it's a really inspiring Sunday, and I want you to know what you're part of if you're not entirely sure. So make sure you take time to check that out. Also, there's a full band, like everybody in one location music video, whose volume deserves to be cranked up to like 11. I don't want you to miss that either. Okay? Okay, so now I need a transition from important announcements to the message. There is a picture going around on the internet in recent weeks, and I know many of us have seen something like this before. It shows us just how small our enormous planet is. The third little seed there is our home, and its size in relation to the other planets and the sun. It's breathtaking to think about. I don't know about you, but for me, it's breathtaking to think about, and it's humbling. The Earth is huge, 25,000 miles in circumference, but that's nowhere near the size of the sun at 2.7 million miles in circumference. Now, maybe that makes our sun feel a little cocky, so we can then remind the sun that it's not even one of the big kids. It becomes the size of the period on a sentence next to stars like Betelgeuse and Antares. If Betelgeuse was where our sun was, the orbits of Mercury and Venus and Earth would be inside of it. But lest these guys think there's something special, it's likely that there are even bigger stars than these in our galaxy. But it's hard to know that because our night sky is a hilariously small percentage of our Milky Way galaxy, and we're only just recently beginning to learn how to peer out and see more sky, more stars. And as we do peer out, we're even more speechless because thanks to the James Webb Telescope, we're only a few months into learning that there are so many more galaxies in the universe than we previously thought, and each one of those galaxies containing billions and billions of stars, and who knows how many planets. It's impossible to comprehend. There are more stars out there than grains of sand down here. So, with all this in our hearts, listen to David's several thousand-year-old song with new ears. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name, your reputation in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants, you have created a foundation regarding your foes to silence the enemy and the avenger, or the mocker. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are humans that you are mindful of them? Mortals that you would care for them. Yet you've made them just a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion or responsibility over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all the sheep and oxen, all the beasts of the field, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your reputation in all the earth. David has a real moment of wow here, and he writes this song where he seems to feel like, I don't understand how someone like me can matter to whoever it is responsible for making all of this, let alone be loved and given power and responsibility and honor. I don't understand it. What a reputation you have on earth for people who stop to consider what it means to be alive, to consider what has been made. I think we could have the same kind of moment if we try to take it all in. That life and reality, it's just too much to comprehend sometimes. And behind all of it is love. John, the gospel writer, he starts his gospel with an obvious nod to the creation story in Genesis at the beginning of the Bible, but he's talking about Jesus, and he refers to Jesus as the Word. This is a Greek idea. Logos means the wisdom of the divine, among other things. He says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overtake it or couldn't overcome it. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, lived in our midst. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and of truth. At the headwaters of all the Christian traditions is this notion that Jesus is the incarnation of the one responsible for all the things. And in him, all the things hold together. He's the light of all people, the true light that enlightens all people, the one who sees all creation as a thing to love and to validate by becoming part of it, participating in it, affirming it, inviting it to evolve. So I don't know what your view of yourself is, or is of the world or the environment, or what you think that is the distance between you and the source of all things, the divine source of all things. But here's the truth. You and I and all things are one, incomprehensibly amazing whole. And the Spirit of Christ takes responsibility for it, sustains it, loves it so much they affirm it by living in it and dying in it, redeeming it. We are God-breathed beings made of the same things as planets and stars, and it all comes from one. It all is one. There's a sobering truth that the mystics have been saying for millennia, and science has only recently been able to back up, and it's this: everything is connected. We are all, and everything that exists, part of a whole. That's the big miracle, is that it's all one gigantic miracle. That's the sacred truth, is that there's not a thing in the whole cosmos that's unsacred. That nature, turns out, is supernatural. We're not separate from creation, we are creation. We're not living in it or on it, we are it. We are not far from the Creator, we are creators, sustained by the Creator, and we've never been apart from the Creator. There's nowhere in all the universe that you can go to be further or closer to the Creator. It is all connected, it is all one, and you and I are part of it. But believing we are all separated, or some people are and others aren't, it causes all kinds of suffering. Because the illusion of being divided from God turns our life into this anxious audition for love. The illusion of being separate from each other makes us believe that arbitrary things like borders, or our differences, or success or failure, hierarchies, the way we rank each other, that those are real. The illusion of being separate from creation, from earth, from nature and the natural, as though we're guests in the environment rather than fundamental parts of it, it's literally making our earth less habitable. For us and countless millions of species we share earth with, the idea that human beings live on but are not one with the earth, that the earth is disposable, it's to be used, it's other than what we are, it literally is driving policy decisions to make the climate, pushing the climate and the environment to the brink of collapse. The illusion of all this separateness, it fools us into believing that the one connected thing is many fragmented things, compatible, incompatible things, related, unrelated, useful, useless things. And because of this illusion, all hell has broken loose in each of us and for all of us. So, what would happen if we decided that the center of our faith, we would put in an effort to wake ourselves back up to the truth that all the major faith traditions have insisted from the beginning? All is one. And all is sustained and loved, and there's nothing any of us or our illusions can actually do about that. What if we raised our children to understand you don't just live on earth, you are earth. You don't just look at stars, you are stars. And you're not just made by God, you are sustained and enlightened and enveloped and full of God. Would we still have people 30 years from now saying, God is distant and angry? Climate change doesn't matter, earth is for us to use, drill, baby, drill. Those kinds of things, would we still be saying those? Now, at this point, let me address one of our big hang-ups with all of this, because I can feel it percolating. I'm going to address the hang-up, and then I'm going to say some other things that are intended to be very challenging for some of us. And so I hope you'll take the full ride, because if you jump off too early, you're not going to get where I think we need to be. Here's one of the mother of all hang-ups about that we have about this, or feel like we're supposed to have about this, and it's this. You and I have been taught that we're fundamentally bad, evil, and separate from God and each other because of that badness. And all of this has been all this creation, everything has been tainted with our badness so much that it has to be destroyed. So generally speaking, we were taught the doctrine of original sin. Original sin is a doctrine that says what happened in the Garden of Eden literally happened, and to this day we have an innate sinfulness in us that God cannot stand. What we are, we became in Adam and Eve, and it broke reality and us apart, fragmenting and ruining everything. Original sin is what's making people say that they're nothing without God, that they're separated from God until they convert themselves to Christianity, and a particular kind of Christianity, of course, not just any. That everything that they do and think is wrong and even evil, and if God doesn't step in and think and act for them, then all they can accomplish is evil, 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 because that's who they fundamentally are. It's how they were born. Ever since Adam and Eve, unless we get saved, we are as worthless as filthy rags and make God sick to God's alleged stomach. Are there Bible verses that support this? Of course. As I hope we've made clear, you can find Bible verses to support anything that you come up with. For instance, there are Bible verses that completely knock down the idea of this intergenerational contagion of sin from Adam all the way to now. Like, the child will not share the guilt of the parent, nor will the parent share the guilt of the child. Everybody's sins are on their own head. The earliest Christians didn't believe in original sin. There's no evidence that they did. They've never heard of it, so far as we can tell, because Judaism in general, from which Christianity comes, it didn't teach anything like that, despite having quite a bit of history with the Adam and Eve story themselves. They never heard of it. But once the idea of original sin caught on sometime later with some Christians, plenty of other Christians heard it, rejected it, and said it's completely wrong and it's toxic. Eastern Orthodox Christians, for example, they did and still do reject the doctrine of original sin. The bottom line, this idea of original sin isn't something that you can just find in the Bible and quote it and believe it. It was an interpretation. It's different verses cobbled together. It was invented almost 4 centuries after the time of Jesus, and it was done so by a man who apparently didn't even read Greek. His name was Augustine. It looks like Augustine made a really unfortunate translation choice of 2 words in Romans chapter 5 and a Latin version of the text, and he changed a preposition. And from that one little change, among other things, all of Protestants, Reformed, Calvinists, millions and millions of pastors, congregations, to this day, they can't even understand their faith apart from Augustine's error about all of us being guilty of Adam's sin. And I'm not going to try to do a Bible study and unpack all the language stuff, because primarily I don't speak Greek, and there's plenty of scholarly writing out there for any of us who want to geek out about it. But suffice it to say for now that this idea we carry with us comes from one dude's influence. A dude who was super smart, but he left Christianity, joined another religion, and then later came back to Christianity having been influenced by that other religion. And he wrote about remembering enjoying the thrill of stealing fruit that he didn't even need, about struggling with shame and the inner conflict over his sexual appetites. So intense were they that he famously prayed, "Lord, make me pure, but not yet." And there's tons more like that. He wasn't a villain. He's just a person with an opinion and a platform. And later he admitted he felt genuinely awful about some of his things that he had done and his propensity to do bad things. I got a leaf on the camera. He wrote about those things in a work called Confessions. Oh, now I've messed myself all up. There we go. In his work on Confessions, he confessed that he felt bad about that. But in it, he also talked about that it seemed like everybody seemed to have this propensity that he himself had, this proclivity to sin. But any first-year psychology student would say, wait, isn't Augustine processing his own conflicted shame out loud? Isn't he projecting? Now, I can't know his actual motives, but we can know that this one man invented the idea that to this day tempts us all to feel worthless without a sort of, we have to anxiously cling to a Jesus who's going to come back and slaughter everybody, or at least most people, and then burn everything that put David in awe about, burn it all down. So many of us carry anxiety and shame, and we sing Amazing Grace, but it's that part where we say, "A wretch like me." That's what actually shapes our view of ourselves and God and others, the world. And the illusion has gone so deep that many of us, we don't we don't even think we're hearing the truth unless we're hearing something frightening or unpopular. Too many people seem to delight in making ugly, politically incorrect statements with attached Bible quotes, because they've learned the truth is supposed to elicit a negative response because people are fundamentally evil. And so, of course, they recoil at good news. So the worse their reaction, the more true you know what you said is. If I can be bluntly honest, the concept of original sin is cynicism. It's a poisonous way of looking at human beings. It's a childish way of observing the complexities of what motivates people, how human beings deal with pain, how and why they give in to impulses or self-soothing, what we do emotionally and behaviorally with the massive weight of being alive. It's cynical and it's childish and it's brought so much pain and continues to cause so much pain even now. So hear me and go discover for yourself. You are not born a sinner. You are not evil at heart until you're born again. You are stars. We are earth. We are energy and light. We are God breath. We are each unique expressions of the one whole, entirely connected reality. And so is everybody else, and so are your enemies. Original sin is a powerful driver too, but not just in how we think about God or how we might walk around assuming we deserve hell and all that. It affects other dimensions of our lives very deeply as well. There's a whole theory that Calvinism is why capitalism took off. And the idea, it goes like this. One of the core tenets, the core tenet of Calvinism, is that people are predestined. They're predetermined before they're born whether God is going to send them to heaven or hell. It's a horrendous thing to teach people, but it did catch on as a major Protestant denomination. Now, how does one know if they're predestined before they're born for eternal joy or they're already marked for hell as a worthless sinner, incapable of any good and cut off from the rest of creation and God and everybody else? How could you know that? Well, you'd need a sign that you had God's blessing. So, as the theory goes, and it's not without its criticism, adherents to Calvinism started working and pouring themselves into their work. They worked really hard, saving their money, reinvesting their money in their businesses, growing their little empires until it was clear they were anybody's definition of successful. Look at what they've done. They're successful. And you know what? Successful people are blessed people. And God doesn't bless what God doesn't intend to elect for God's love. And so this definition of success became the sign they need to relieve their salvation panic. And the spirit of capitalism was born. An economic system that obviously already existed in other forms and other places, and obviously has its pluses, but one that may have largely been born out of an anxiety and panic about human worth and maybe God being a monster. And to this day, we find ourselves not only living in the reverberations of that kind of thinking, that kind of anxiety, but we can also observe the many ways you and I assume sort of a secular original sin about ourselves. That there's something fundamentally flawed about us before we get to theology. We're not smart enough or attractive enough. We're not kind enough, funny enough, available enough, skinny enough, tall enough, strong enough, sexy enough, trendy enough, informed enough. We haven't achieved enough. We're not good enough with money. We've not seen enough, traveled enough. We're not happy enough. We're not sad enough. We're not angry enough. On and on and on. We're fundamentally flawed before we even get to questions about God and theology and all that. Think about how long it takes some of us to get out the door, to get our face and our hair right. How long it takes us to get around to trying something we long to try. How hard it is to bring our full selves into a moment sometimes. How much time we put into trying to control others' opinions about us to make it as positive as possible. It's the lie of original sin, in a way. An original fatal flaw, an essential fundamental wrongness that says we're not worthy of oneness. And it's a lie, one that makes us forget that we're an integral part of the whole, sustained by love and by light, for love and for light. And no matter what the voice in your head argues as you hear this, it's true. You're not fundamentally flawed. You're not an original sinner. You're loved, and you are love. Now, there's a pendulum to be cautioned about here, because what some of us in our egos want to do here is, now that it's established, we're not wretched sinners cut off from God and people in creation. Now we say, sweet, I'm awesome, I'm special, I shall be revered and catered to and treated exceptionally well, or else. See, now we've gone from original sin to self-centered brat, and we've seen both. And both destroy the world because both see the world as fragmented and hierarchical. It's something to dominate or be crushed by. It's still a survival game. So this is why we see messaging like Jesus saying, if anyone would come after me, if anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross. And remember what a cross is in Jesus' day. Take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life is going to end up losing it. But whoever loses lets go of the things of the ego for my sake. That's when he'll come to life. That's when he'll find it. See, if we think God is disgusted about us by default, and we're born separated sinners, that life's a short audition for being saved from torture, then deny yourself is just more oppressive, eat your vegetables religion. It makes faith and life heavier because sinners don't deserve to feel good about anything. But if we see things how Jesus seems to see them, then we can hear Jesus inviting us into a healthy, awakened state when he says, deny yourself. It's liberation out of egoic, self-centered thinking into the oneness thinking, communal, collaborative, mutual thinking. Denying self isn't about shutting down or suppressing or pretending you're not important. It's about remembering down in our hearts, I'm not the point. We are. It's all one and I'm part of it. Now some will say here, well, Jesus is the point, and that's fine. But I'm convinced if you look at Jesus and say, Jesus, you are the point. I think Jesus points to your family or your neighbor or your enemies and says, okay, make them the point. Because the ego wants to be the center. It wants to be separated from the whole so it can achieve what it thinks it has to achieve to gain love and respect or inclusion. But that's rooted in a delusion about the nature of reality, which is actually one. So our enlightenment, our awakening has us decentering more and more, decentering within a given conversation with a person or while we're planning something, during a confrontation that had to happen, during the experience of joy or pain, or the impulse to render a judgment. We're learning all is one, and the one animating me is the one animating everything. A community of enlightened people is a community of humble people, a gentle and generous people. A community of enlightened people is an honest, curious, non-judgmental people. A self and others loving people. A creative, risk-tolerant people. A people who change their mind and expand their heart over and over and over again. I know I speak for a lot of us when I say I'm tired of tired religion that threatens and shames and divides and tells us that we're so bad God can't stand to even look at us. And I'm tired of religion that refuses to see what the mystics and even science has been pointing to, that it's all even more awe-inspiring and interconnected and beautiful than we can comprehend. And we're all part of it. No one is out. It's all one. Each of us, all of us, me and you, the guy that decided to start hammering whatever he's hammering while I was recording this, it's all one. And Christ is the light of all of it. So maybe the sin, if there must be one, is the ignorance we have about this truth. An ignorance that makes us feel like everyone's in this alone. It's everyone for themselves, that the world is something to use rather than a oneness to participate in and enjoy. Maybe the sin is seeing the connectivity of all reality and behaving as though you're not part of it or someone else isn't part of it. But I'll tell you, what doesn't tire me, what pumps life into my veins, it's the picture of life being as hard as it is and as beautiful as it is, so hard and so beautiful that the maker and giver of life became flesh, became particles and elements, became thoughts and feelings and sensation and perspective, and lived in our midst, and then invited us to live in this world like him. I hope that if you feel tired, you'll put down small and anxious, fragmented religion and its rigid, panicky views of reality and wake up to the miracle we are. And then deny your individual self every chance it makes sense to pour yourself into another and watch yourself come more fully alive in the process. In closing, I'll give Walt Whitman the last word with his poem, Miracle. Why, who makes much of a miracle? As to me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan or dart my sight over the roofs of houses toward the sky or wade with naked feet along the beach just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone I love, or sit at table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers opposite me riding in the car, or watch honeybees busy around the hive of a summer forenoon, or animals feeding in the fields, or birds, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of the sundown, or of stars shining so quiet and bright, or the exquisite, delicate, thin curve of the new moon in spring. These, with the rest, one and all, are to me miracles, the whole referring, yet each distinct and in its place. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. To me, the sea is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion of the waves, the ships with men in them. What stranger miracles are there?
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.